In this short demo, we're going to see how easy it is to use OpenSpirit Connect to be able to load data from a variety of different XML document formats to different data sources via OpenSpirit. Specifically, we'll be looking at loading WITSML XML documents to an OpenWorks project. So let's start off by using the designer tool that's part of the OpenSpirit Connect product, and we've created an empty designer project here. Designer tool is what you would use to design your own custom data transfer workflows or your own web services. In this case, we're going to be loading some data from some WITSML XML documents to an OpenWorks project. So we need to first of all import the XML schemas that define the WITSML data that we're going to be dealing with. So let's go and import the XML schemas that I have already downloaded onto my system here. So I'm going to import resources from a folder. Now let's navigate on my desktop here, and I have in my file system here a directory cleverly called XML schemas that has in it all the different schemas we'll be needing. So let's go ahead and import that and all of its subdirectories. And that now adds that to the project. If we double click on it, we'll see that we have some subdirectories. Within the WITSML folder, we have all the different XSDs that define all the different objects that are part of the WITSML standard. We also have the GML schemas that are referenced by WITSML, and there are also some ISO schemas that are referenced. We can validate all these, make sure that all the schemas have been properly defined and cross-referenced, and that's what we're doing right now. And it's verified that we successfully imported all those schemas. The other thing we might want to do as a setup here is that since we'll be writing data to a project, we need to create a data connection that defines what project we want to write the data to. So we're going to make use of the some OpenSpirit activities. Activities are these icons represent different things you can do, and they're organized into palettes. So if I go to the OpenSpirit palette here, you see there's a wide variety of activities that we can perform. What we want to do right now is define a data connection, and we'll give it a meaningful name. We'll call this our OpenWorks copy project. I have a project set up that I transfer data to. Let's go ahead and connect to OpenSpirit so we can select a particular data source. So now I can see the data sources that are available on my network. Yours will be different. I'm going to connect to OpenWorks R5000, and I discover there's different districts that I have access to. Let's access my onshore district, and let's set the project. I'm going to select this project called Copy UTM-12. So now we've defined a data connection that represents connecting to that particular project. So the next thing we want to do now is define some sort of process definition. That's where we're actually going to do the work of reading and writing data. So we'll go to our process palette here and just drag a new process definition over here, and we'll call this load well. We actually have several XML documents, one representing WITSML wells, another one representing WITSML wellbores, another logs, and another markers. And let's create first of all an activity that, or a process definition that will load the well. Right now it's an empty process definition. It has a beginning and an end. So we need to fill in the bits in between. So the first thing we need to do is to read the file, so the XML file. So let's go to the File palette, and let's get the read file activity and drag that into our current process definition. And after reading the file, we're going to need to parse it into an XML document according to the WITSML schemas. So let's go to the XML activity, and we want to bring in the parse XML activity. Then having parsed it into an XML document, we want to then take some of the components of that document and load that via OpenSpirit to that OpenWorks project. So let's go back to the OpenSpirit palette, and let's grab the right activity. We're going to need to do an insert activity. So now we've identified the activities, let's go ahead and chain them together. This is forming a data flow where we're taking the output of one activity as an input to the next activity. So we now have defined the activities we want to perform. We defined the sequence of activities. We now need to fill in some details and the configuration panels for each one of those. So let's do that. Let's start off with a read, and let's give it a little bit better name. It's important to give good names because this process definition becomes kind of the documentation of what your application is going to do. So we can say this is going to read XML well file, and we want it to read the data as text. That's correct. And we see as input to this activity, it's read, meaning there's some required input that's missing, which is the file name. We have to tell what file to read. So let me navigate in my file system again here and see where I have some data. I have in this directory called demo data, a WITSML directory, and I've got the different documents in here. So let's go ahead and just copy the path there. And let's put the file path there, and the file itself was called well.xml. So there we've defined, oops, with a typo. There we've defined the source of our WITSML wells. So now we can go to the next activity where we want to parse, we'll call it parse WITSML, and we want the input to this to be text. So this input panel, it needs to have a string represents the file contents of that previous activity. So you notice on the left here we have available to us the output from all previous activities. So this read XML well file was that activity there, and we'll look at the file content and we'll simply map the text content to that XML string. And you notice it now is turned black. It's happy. The required inputs have been satisfied. We'll hit apply, and now let me just tidy these up a bit here. So now we have the input to this activity. Now what we need to do now is tell it what schema should it use to create an XML document. Well, here's the point where we'll reference the WITSML schema we just imported. So we want to have it to create an XML element. So we give it a reference, and let's navigate to that schema that we just imported. Let's go to WITSML, and here are all the different WITSML objects. We're trying to read a well object, so we have to find the well object schema, which is obj well, and it's in this namespace, and its root element is called wells. It allows for repeating wells to occur in the same document. So let's go ahead and select that and hit apply. Now we notice the output of this parse WITSML activity now has the structure as dictated by the WITSML schema. So you see that wells element can contain repeating well elements. Well elements is a complex type that has all these different attributes on it, or at least optionally on it. So that will represent whatever is in that file. The next activity is going to be an insert activity. Now actually we have the potential of reading multiple wells in this activity, but we can only insert one well at a time. So what we need to do is do an iteration over all the wells that were read. In fact, I think this file only has one well, but in general it could have multiple wells. So let's put a group surrounding this, and let's configure this group, and let's of course give it a reasonable name. Let's say loop over wells, and you want this to be an iteration, and we'll just give it an index name I, and we have to tell it what it's iterating over. Well, let's configure this, and the data we have, the output of parse XML, was a set of wells. So the well is what we're iterating over. So we want to pass on that current iteration element to the next activity, and we'll call that just a well. So now let's look at this OpenSpirit insert, and again we'll give it a name, insert well, and we get to pick the data source we're going to insert to, and it was right there. And let's save this. Now it's asking us to build the SQL query. Well, we have a little query builder here, so we don't have to know SQL, we just have to know our data model. And I'm in this case going to be inserting into OpenWorks, so I have the choice of either using the OpenWorks native model, which covers all 1,200 plus tables that are in OpenWorks, all the different elements, all the different entities, but I'm going to use the OpenSpirit model. So this workflow would in fact work with any OpenSpirit enabled data store. And what we're writing here is to the well virtual table, and now we get to indicate which attributes we want to write. Well, let's write a comment, country. We'll pick several of the common. Let's see what else. We'll write location, name, offshore block, state or province. I'll pick up some of the attributes that may be available to us. Okay, I think we've gotten most of the items there. And you notice that it built for me automatically a SQL statement. I didn't have to write the SQL, I just selected the attributes. And it also left parameters to be filled in. We have to provide the values for all those items. And those now appear on the input tab. So you now see the input to this activity where you have to supply values for these different attributes. Well, where will those come from? Well, they'll come from the well that was created when we read that WITSML file. So what we want to do now is map from that well, which is the current well in this iteration loop, to the appropriate attributes here. So here we're basically doing a data model mapping. So let's go ahead and do this. The UID of the well is going to map to my identifier. The name of the well is going to map to my name. Let's open up this complex element. Let's see, what else do we have here? We have country is going to get mapped to country. State goes to state or province. County goes to county. I have operator to my current operator. Data source, let's fill that in as a constant. We'll say the data source is WITSML. So you notice you can just simply map attributes you've read elsewhere in the workflow in here, or you can put in constants, or you can have a full rich set of functions you can perform. You can come in here and you have a variety of functions you can perform both on strings, dates, etc. And that comes in very handy. Let's finish up our mapping here. You notice that ground elevation is a complex element in OpenSpirit's data model. It consists of a unit and a value. The unit is a symbol in some unit catalog, and the value is just the measurement value itself. If we scroll down here, we notice that we have a, let's see, we're looking at ground elevation. So ground elevation is right here. It has a unit of measure and a value. So we're going to map the value to the value and the unit of measure to the symbol. It turns out that the WITSML unit catalog was in fact based upon the OpenSpirit unit catalog. We took the original POSC unit of measure work and we added some additional information to it, and then we donated that back to Energistics to be used in the WITSML and Rescue ML model efforts. So fortunately our symbols will match. So let's see what else we have here. We have water depth, so let's map that in. Water depth was down here, and let's take the water depth value to the value and the unit of measure, which is just the symbol to symbol. You notice that things turn black when the required information has been supplied. So offshore block, I think we have block available to us here. Let's see. Block, there we go. So we'll map that there. Now the one item that we've not mapped yet is the comment field. Let's see, I don't know if there's any comments to map. We'll leave that one blank. Location. Well, my example data here is from the North Sea, so its location information is not valid for my project. My OpenWorks project is actually in Wyoming, so if I try to load the actual well location information from my source, the latitude and longitude, would be outside the bounds of my coordinate system. So I'm going to just hard code a well location. Normally I would just do a mapping of my easting and northing, or my latitude longitude, x and y, and then map the coordinate system. And we could define the coordinate system from either the EPSG codes or as very well-known text or an OpenSpirit coordinate system key. But in this case I'm going to just input the a fixed latitude and longitude, and I know the EPSG code for NAD 27 is 4326. I'm going to input the latitude, which is about 35.6 degrees, and longitude minus 105 degrees, and give it a z of 0. So now I have defined my mapping. I've mapped the data from my WITSML document. I'm going to loop over every well I encounter, and I'm going to insert it into my target project. So let's go ahead and save this project. And actually I want to do one more thing before I actually run this. You notice I'm always inserting. I'm not checking to see if it was empty or not, or whether a well already exists. If I was doing this for real, I would do a insert, and if that failed, I turn around and do an update if that's what I desire to do. But what I want to do is create a little utility here that will clean out wells in that project for me. This is something that's handy when you're doing some development testing. So I'm going to create another process. Create another process here and call this clean project. And I want that to use a couple OpenSpirit activities. I'm going to delete all the well bores and then delete all the parent wells. I want to clean out all the well data in my project here. So now let's just quickly do this. I'm doing this just before I run that insert, so I'm going to be inserting to a clean project. So we'll delete well bores first, then we'll delete wells, and we'll select the data source and the SQL query. We want to delete the wells in this case, and we're not going to put any where clauses, and it warns me I'm going to delete all the rows, which is what I want to do. And let's go back here and do the same thing for the well bores. Let's delete from this OpenWorks project we're writing to. We will delete all the well bores. Now, this design tool typically builds something that gets deployed to be run on a server elsewhere in your network, but during your development phase, quite normal just to test within this. So I will actually run this within my test environment. Let's go ahead and clean the project. It will now execute that process, and it's done. You see it actually flashed. It showed it moving through, and I can click on these and see what it actually found. It found no rows, so no well bores to delete, and it looks like it was one well that deleted. So we've done that. Now let's go back to our main project, and we have our load well, and let's go ahead and test that. So let's test our load well activity. It's starting up. It's done. So I can click here and look at the output of that activity, and it says number of rows inserted 1. So it inserted one well, and these are all the values it inserted. It inserted, let's expand this a bit here. It inserted all this information that it read from my WITSML file, and that has been successfully inserted into my target OpenWorks project. So a very simple way of parsing data according to an XML schema, doing some data model transformation, and loading the data with the appropriate tagging of coordinates and units. In this case, loading it to OpenWorks. The exact same workflow would have worked loading it to PPDM, to Finder, to Geoframe, to Petra, to Recall, to EPOS, to any of the data stores that OpenSpirit supports the well data types. Thank you.